next level from the conversation that we just heard. Kay said we didn't have a chance to talk about security, and we'll go specifically into that in the third panel this morning. But when we think about the future of government networks, everybody, the first word everybody uses, government and industry, is security. So tell me how that all fits together as you see it moving forward.
So from our perspective, right, the network is one of the places where you can secure your network, your data, right? So from a customer perspective, what you need to secure is the data that you have. And then you now have the network that distributes the data all over the place. So you use the network as the first place to protect your data and your services. So from our perspective, we consider the network to be the trusted connection that gets you where you need to go to.
What's the term there that I think is the most significant is trusted network. What's the reason that you think that word trusted is important?
So the trust is basically between the customer, which is the users of the network, and yourself, right, and the network service provider. So you have to build that trust between the two in order to be able to make sure that your data stays secure, and you don't have, if there is any problem, you know where to call and get those things taken care of. So for us, trusted is a very key word, and we want to be your trusted network provider.
Thanks everybody on this end for joining me today. Gary, Doug, Young, it's nice to see all of you. Doug and Gary, you guys can fight over who answers this, but as the practitioners, again, based on what we just heard about this transformation that is happening specifically with EIS, but more broadly across your organizations and across the government as an enterprise, what does the future look like to you? What are you kind of wargaming for the future as far as what you need and what you want in an environment where we're not really sure what the network might look like 5 years from now just because of the advance of technology? Gary, I'll draft you first.
Sure. So from the perspective where I'm sitting, we talk about how do we get access to information, right? And from my perspective, it's more important about securing the information, securing your access to necessary information, and not necessarily worrying about how you're necessarily accessing that. We talk about having trusted providers. Nowadays, as we move around the world, 1 second you're on a Verizon network, you're on your cell phone, all of a sudden you're on an AT&T network, you're not really sure which cell tower you're on. I think it's really important to be able to have flexibility and mobility and construct yourself in such a way that you've built in protections that allow you to access information, but not necessarily be constrained by how you're getting there, right? I don't travel anymore without using a navigation app. I don't necessarily worry about which road I'm on, which county I'm passing through. As long as I get from point A to point B, that's what's important to me. For my customers, that's what's important to them is, are they getting access to the information they need, the services they need? They don't care how I get them there. And I'm less concerned about the actual path of how I get them there, more about doing it in a secure manner and doing it in a timely manner, and being able to be flexible enough to survive outages, survive various conditions that you find yourself in. So from my perspective, I think it's that whole, and I realize it sounds a little cliche, but anytime, anywhere, type of access, right? I realize it's cliche, but that's what my customers demand. They just want it to work, right? They don't think about it with their cell phones in their personal life. They don't really care about who their ISP is at home. As long as they sit down and they double click an icon and something pops up on their screen, that's what they care about.
Doug, the difference here that I think that I've seen over the last 10 years is exactly what Gary's getting at, and that is that there was a time where the future of the network would have been dictated by people like who are on the stage, industry and technologists and government working together. And what Gary's describing, I wonder, is maybe the same thing that you're seeing, which is the end user dictates what you deliver now to enable them to deliver mission. It's not really a top-down thing anymore. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely. When you look at NOAA's mission, which is really a global mission, and we've got platforms with sensing systems that include satellites, ships, planes, unmanned vehicles, fixed assets like tide gauges and all sorts of things. So we were in the Internet of Things long before it had a name. And so the demand to get access to the cloud from anywhere, anytime, is being driven by those kinds of sensing systems to do those types of observations. And so we have to be in some of the most extreme places to be able to make observations that feed models and result in forecasts, et cetera. So you're right. Just in the past year on our core networks, we saw about an 85% increase in traffic from the previous year, which for us was sort of a very significant event. And it had to do with moving our traffic behind our tie caps and some other things. But that's an unsustainable kind of growth unless you're really looking for innovative ways to address it.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back to that idea because my sense is that dynamic's not going to change anytime moving forward, as when you're right that you're pioneers in the Internet of Things and having sensors everywhere, but you're not unique in that, and everybody's going to see, I think, that kind of explosive growth. Young, what I think is fascinating about this conversation is, again, this idea of building something that doesn't have to just work now. It's got to work in the future, and you have to have some kind of structure in place to anticipate what you don't know is coming. Tell me how that works, and tell me how you try to conceptualize it and not just plug the pieces together.
Well, I wish I have a crystal ball, but
so do I.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that it's very interesting that I think that we are in a period of time where we are reaching an inflection driven by a lot of changes in technology, such as the cloud or the software-defined anything, plus the migration to managed services and OpEx, CapEx, that sort of thing, and plus this looming danger of security, right? So all those things combined. I think it forces us to all become more aware of all the pieces that are integrated into this issue, which is the cloud, the network, the storage, the security. We used to have separate group within our organization dealing with each one of those, and I'm bringing them all together under one umbrella, because you cannot talk about network without talking about cloud, and then storage is integrated to that, and how can you leave out security, right? So everything have to be together. So to answer your question, we have to have a roadmap. Now, not having a crystal ball make it a little bit harder, but I think that we can certainly think about what if we take the integrated approach, we can certainly think about what the different steps that need to happen to bring these things together and to bring all of the benefits of the agility, the scalability of the cloud, as well as the performances and all that sort of stuff, and so that we can ask the right question as we move forward. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. I think it's very important for agency to have a roadmap, and I wish that there is an initiative to develop a reference model for our infrastructures government-wide.
What would that look like, ideally, in your mind? And where would that come from?
I don't know where that's going to come from because I'm a techie, I'm clueless. But
what do you think would be a good source of it, though, so that it had the credibility that it would have for people to say, okay, this is serious and we need to do this, not just this is a good idea?
I think it clearly is a collaboration between agencies. Maybe GSA could be part of that, but all of the technical agency, DSS, all of those have to come in. But I think that if you look at what each one of us are doing, there's a piece of our business that are very similar. Everybody is using the same tool, the same email, the same office products, the same database, et cetera, and we have different type of facility, centralized and remote, et cetera, but it's not that different. And when we talk about moving to the cloud, and then we talk about software-defined network or software-defined LAN, then those differences are being abstracted. And so it's becoming more and more something that you can look at the big picture perspective, so to speak. What is missing is, small or medium-sized agencies do not have the skill or the resources to go and investigate and develop all of those. However, those things are not hard. Those things can be done. And that's why I promote the idea of a reference model, because the moment that somebody can deploy and show, look, we can deploy X number, as you said, agility, bring it out to the number of remote sites, scale it up, provision it, shut it down, make it totally secure, guarantee, well, maybe not totally, but, and show that could be done, right? Then the business and the mission side of the agency is going to look at it and say, let's use that, because we don't care the underlying, mechanism.
Gary used a term, Anil, that I think was interesting, and I'm not sure if it was on purpose or not.
Of course it was.
Of course it was.
We talked.
I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I didn't want to give you too much credit. He mentioned securing info and securing access to the information. And I wonder if we do see those as two different things, and if we should see those as two different things. If we should approach them separately or together, or if it's all the one thing, or you're thinking about it too hard is entirely an appropriate answer.
So I think securing access is definitely a key to making sure that what you are doing, how you are getting to your data is the right way and it's secure. Because most of the hackers, they try to infiltrate your network. Try to get into your network. So accessing the information should be secure. And then, but on the other side too, the data needs to be secure as well, because once you get into the data, you don't want to have the hacker go east-west, right, and get to the data. So you have to secure the data as well as the access to the data. And we, as CenturyLink, as a service provider, we have a lot of enterprise customers as well, right? So we have small, medium businesses, we have large enterprises. We help them secure their data. We help them provide connectivity to their network. So we have the ability to get the customer regardless of where they want to go, right? So if you may have a data in the cloud, we know how to get you there. If it may be sitting at your own data center, that's fine too. It may be in your sites, that's okay as well. So we can secure how you get to the data, as well as we can help you with the other security for the data itself.
So Doug, understanding that security is an important part of this conversation, but it's just part of this conversation. Some of the concepts about what the future of government networks look like are dramatically different, radically different than what we were talking about even 5 years ago, let alone 10, 15 years ago. What are some of the most important things that you see as far as the building blocks of what a network looks like, let's say 5 years out? And Young, I know I'm not going to put you on the spot for that crystal ball, neither anybody else, but what do we see now? What should we be paying attention to now, do you think, Doug, regarding those pieces of the network and of the future?
Well, so obviously cloud is huge in this, and trying to figure out how we move as much to a cloud environment as we can that addresses the security requirements, whether that's a security stack in the cloud, a tick in the cloud, and how we do that in a way that doesn't constrain us with the agility that you get from cloud, I think are things that we're trying to figure out, and I'm assuming that's a common problem. I think that being able, for NOAA for instance, to be able to issue a warning that there's a tornado in the area, our connections are so critical to us, and we have to have redundancy and reliability always there. And so I think to be able to secure from the endpoints back to the cloud, back to our data center, back to the compute is really critical for us. And so you can't approach this without considering the cyber part of it, because you have to secure it. For us, availability is essential to the data that we collect and the warnings that we give out. So I think that it's that conversation about capability of cloud is also about security of cloud. And I think there's a lot of assumptions sometimes wrongly that by putting things in the cloud, you've somehow made it safe. but that's obviously not the case. And so we're really taking a hard look at how we're addressing that security aspect of what we're putting in the cloud.
As Young was talking about this hardware to software architecture transformation, what does that mean, and what does this idea of getting out of businesses rather than getting into businesses mean for you? Because that's what you do. That's the benefit to the agency, is you do that stuff
Right.
for everybody.
Right.
And they don't have to do it individually anymore. Tell me how that's changing the way that you're thinking about serving the customer.
So we have this phrase, and this may be kind of a cliche phrase, but we call it a digital experience. So we think that our customers are becoming are getting used to this idea that the Web 2.0 companies like Amazon and folks have done, right? Which is basically self-service and instant gratification, right? So you go to the website, you order something, and it comes to you right away. And so we are taking that story and we are putting that into the network services as well, right? So we are building self-service capabilities in the networks. Today you can do bandwidth on demand, and you can turn up services to cloud on demand when you need it. And then taking that a step further, trying to deliver services on demand as well. And in order to facilitate that, we are going towards this whole network function virtualization, software-defined networks, and building pieces in order to do that. So today we can move your workloads from one cloud provider to the other cloud provider, or you can increase or decrease your workload at clouds. But we want to take that same concept and move it to a network function as well, right? So you may have a remote site today where all the traffic is normal plain text traffic or whatever, but tomorrow you may want to encrypt that. We want to give you that ability to go into our portal and be able to download an encryptor to your remote site and be able to encrypt the service, right? So it becomes on demand as needed. You add services on top and you subtract services. So that's the transformation that we are looking at from a network service provider perspective, so that you don't have to, as the customer, does not have to think about it. It's more about, can I get that service when I need it? And if I don't need it, I don't need to pay for it either, right? So the account guys are looking away from me. But it's that transactional capability is what we are looking at. And we are very heavily invested in doing that. That's my job. So if we don't do it, I don't have a job. So, but we are heavily invested in it. That's our vision. We have different pieces that we already have, but we can help the agency as well, right? To see how you can use that capability for your services that you need. And then we can also help you build the framework that he was talking about, because we have all customers from small, medium to large customer, enterprise customer, global customers as well.